Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, the second line from the top. We're in the middle of analyzing the Mishnah that said that if there was a needle that was found in the basar of the kachim after the basar was cut into pieces. They found this machat. The kayin and the knife are tor, but the basar is tummy. Now the Gemara is going to analyze this segment that says the basar, the meat is tummy. In order for the food to become tummy, it has to come into contact with a liquid, with one of the 7 liquids. What is the hechsher that this meat received over here? Which hechsher did it have? Perhaps you'll say it had a hechsher with the blood that spurted out after the shlit. They need a hechsher that after the shrita, after it was now food. And at that point, so what was being machshered? So perhaps you'll say it's the dam after the shrita, when already now the animal was shechted, the blood is spurting out. And that blood, perhaps you'll say, is machsher, gave the hechsher to the basar. How can you say that? How do I know that the blood of kachim is not machsher? Yes, blood is machsher, but not the dam of kachim. How do I know that? The Torah says, don't eat the blood, pour it on the ground, spill it on the ground like water. So you see that dam is compared to mayim, to water. But what type of dam is compared to water? Dam shenishbach kamayim machsher. The blood that is poured on the ground, that's spilled on the ground like water, that's machsher. Usheina nishbach kamayim eino machsher. But the blood that's not spilled on the ground is not machsher. Now the dam of kachim is not spilled on the ground. This dam has to be collected in the kli, and it has to be poured on the mizbeach. You need hazah on the mizbeach, so it's not spilled on the ground. So this type of dam, the dam of kachim, is not machsher. So where is the hechsher for this basar? Well, this kasha. Perhaps you'll say that it had a hechsher with the liquids in the beimit b'chai, in the butchering place, in the azor. Perhaps that's where it had a hechsher. Meaning, other cases of korbanos or kachim that became tomei, which we do find the Torah says specifically that it comes into contact, it's tomei. Well, that could be talking about dam kachim, that at some point later on, that after the shchita, it was washed, it came into contact with liquid, etc., and it became tomei. But here we're talking specifically where the machat was found in right when you shechted and it was cut into pieces. So the tumah came now at this point in time. There's no other liquids. There's only the liquids that are there in the butchering place. So what is there in the butchering place? There's dam and there's water. Perhaps that you'll say that that is what's machsher. He says no, that even the water, the machsher is not only that they are tor, but they're not machsher either. So they could not come for the hechsher of the liquids that are in the basement b'chaya. Tosfos points out that this is not like the maskana of the Gemara on Tezayin that says where there was machalik between the dam and the water. This sugi over here is going that they're the same. That even the water is not machsher, the water of the basement b'chaya. Ella, perhaps you'll say it's discussion b'chibas hakodesh. Maybe you'll say it doesn't need to come into contact with the liquid because it has a hechsher from chibas hakodesh. So there's this concept of chibas hakodesh, the kavod, how revered the kodesh is, that it gives a chashivas. Normally we say that a food is not considered complete until it has a hechsher. It has to have firstly a hechsher. Raw materials are not makabel tumah. Food or things that are growing from the ground are not makabel tumah. Living organisms are not makabel tumah. They're not makabel tumah unless they have the tumas atzman, like the case of a person, but otherwise, like a zav or zav, etc. But the animal, while it's alive, is not makabel tumah. Now, when it becomes a food, after the point that it becomes a food, is picked from the ground, the animal shechted, it's still not makabel tuma until its completion, where it has a hechsher with a mashke. But that's only for other things. Things where they're kachim, they are inherently chashiv. Because of the chibas HaKodesh, because of how special and revered the Kodesh is, they are inherently chashiv, so they don't need a hechsher. So therefore, perhaps we'll say that this basar over here, the hechsher came from chibas HaKodesh. There's a discussion in the Achreinim, the Mashal, and the Pnei Yeshua, the Minchas Chinuch, is this concept of chibas HaKodesh, is it the Raisa or is it the Rabbanan? But I'll call upon him, chibas HaKodesh is now makes something susceptible to Tumah, the Kachim susceptible to Tumah, even without Hechsher. But frankly, Gemara, no. But we only know, it's only clear to us that the Chibus HaKodesh gives it that much of a cheshivus that it can become possible. That if it came into contact with Tumah, it itself is possible. But we don't know clearly, and we don't see clearly that the Chibus HaKodesh is equal to a Hechsher. Now, when something is Huchshel Kabel Tumah, it can become Tomei. It can also impart Tumah to others. And we can be Minor, Rishon, and Sheni, and go down the line. But we only see from Chibus HaKodesh that it's Lafsula Gufa, that it itself can be possible. But Lamimna Be Rishon V'Sheni Nami, where do we see that you can even count Rishon and Sheni, that is considered Tomei, so that it can impart Tumah to others and make it into a Sheni? Well, if that's the case, Tisha the boy Reish Lakish, you should be able to be Poished Reish Lakish Shaila, because he had a Shaila of a Tzored Shel Menachos, if you have a dry lump of a Mincha. So the mincha is mixed with oil, but if you have one component, some particles of it that the oil didn't reach it, it's a dry lump. So he had a shaila that moinim by rishon hasheni, I like. Do you count the rishon hasheni or not? Is it only that it itself is possible, but you don't count the rishon hasheni, or do you consider it tomei that you count the rishon hasheni? Now over here, if you're saying that the case with the basar over here is that the hechsher is chibus HaKodesh, and it says the basar is tomei, not just basar, it says it's tomei, then you should be able to learn out from here that you're minor rishon hasheni as well. And apparently we can't learn that from here. So therefore, there must be another source for the hechsher. Taisus asks on this pshat that Rashi said that the mincha, that there was some particles that the oil did not touch, and it was dry, and it was a dry lump. Taisus asks, well, we learned previously that the kli is a mitzar of kol mashe b'seicha, that the kli combines everything, and it's considered to be one. It's considered to be one mass. Well, just like when you have a hechsher, the liquid does not have to reach the entire surface of the whole item. If you have an oichel, let's say, for instance, an apple, and it has liquid hechsher on part of it, it's one item, it's one component, so the whole thing has a hechsher. While over here, if there's oil on other parts of the mincha, the kli is a mitzar of it, it's considered as one item. It's considered as all one. So, therefore, it should be irrelevant if there's no oil on some of the particles. Therefore, Taisa says we're talking in a case where the oil has not been poured into the mincha. Al kol panim, what do we see over here? We see that it's not poshet that if the chibus HaKodesh makes it tomei to the extent that you're minor rishon hasheni. So over here it says that the basar is tomei. If the hechsher came through chibus HaKodesh, we should be able to prove it from here. Elamai, there must be another source of hechsher. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Shmuel ki goin shaisa parashal zivchei shlomim. Like the case could be talking where there's a para, the korban in question is zivchei shlomim, and the owner, before bringing it to the azora, v'hevira banar, the owner walked it through a river on the way, v'shachta v'adayin mashka taifeach alea, and they shafted it while it was still dripping with water. So after the shchita, some of the water from the river was machsherin. Why do we pick a case of shlomim? So Rashi explains that the case is just a more common example. It would be more common in the case of a shlomim, for the owner to pass it through the river, because in the case of the shlomim, the owner keeps the hides, he keeps the oil, and he doesn't want it to be a hefsed, so he passes through the river, so it drinks, and now it's lubricated and it's wet, it's easier to skin it, and there's not that much of a hesed on the oil when they skin it. So that's a more common case where the owner would have done something like that, and therefore they shechted it while it was still wet, and that is what's machshir. The last section of the Mishnah says, Nimsa b'perish hakol tor. If the needle that was tameh was found in the excrement, everything, including the balsa, is tor. Well, why don't we say that the perish, which we're assuming, since we interpreted the case over here, that we are explaining the case in the Mishnah where it was a shlamim that passed through the river and it drank the water, we're assuming at this point that the perish is considered a liquid. Well, why don't you say that the perish should be matama the balsa? Why is the balsa tor? It's talking where it's not considered a liquid, it's thick, it's considered to be a solid, and therefore it's not matama the oil. Ravashi Amar Filtem Perish Raki, he says it can even be talking where it's raka, where it's watery. But mishum the have mashka saruach, because it's not matama, because in any event it's considered saruach, it's spoiled, and therefore it would not be matama. It's something that's considered spoiled and it's not matama. Tana Kami the Rav Sheshes, the teacher of the Brisa taught the Brisa before Rav Sheshes, and he made a list of things that are matama, the chain of tuma. So if sheretz is matama, these are the possibilities of the chain of tuma that you could have. Sheretz matama samashk. The sheretz can be matama the liquid. Umashk matama as a shlit. And then the liquid can be matama the shlit. So we're going according to this pshat, at this point, that the tameh liquid could be matama a shlit. Ukli matama soich, and then the shlit is matama oich. V'oichlam matama is a mashkin. And then if you have oichlam that are tameh, it comes into contact with liquids, is matama the mashkin. V'lamanu sholosh tumas b'sheretz, and therefore you have a chain of 3 sheretz. From the tumah of sheretz, it can go down to a level of 3. It can be tamed even to a level of 3. Correct, Gemara, what do you mean about Hani Arba'ah? What do you mean it's 3? Shlishi, this is a Ravi. In the list that we just mentioned, it's a sheretz matamas and mashkim, that's a rishon. The mashkim is a kli, is a sheni. The kli is an oichel, is a shlishi. And oichel, is a mashkim, is a Ravi. It's 4th level. Why are you saying 3 levels? The Gemara says, goes mashkin duration. Cut off or delete the first mashkin duration. When it says the sheretz matamas and mashkin, then delete that, because now we're holding that no, the mashke will not be matamikli. So delete that one, because if that were the case, it could not transfer it to the kli. So therefore he says delete that. Adarab, Gemara says goes mashke the seifa. Why don't you say that you delete the mashke the seifa delete, and learn that the sheretz matama the mashke, the mashke matama the kli, and the kli the oichel, and not the oichel the mashke. Delete the last one. Where it says no, lo yashkan tana damar mashke matama kli ela Rabbi Yehuda. The only one tana that we found that learned that a mashke matama kli is Rabbi Yehuda b'hadarbe, and he retracted from that position. So therefore, it's not matama the kli. V'simanech nezet yaitza, and the simon to remember it is beer. It's the zaisa, because the way they would make the beer is they would first put up a pot, and then put the barley into the pot and fill it with water. So therefore, you have a chain of tumah. You have the pot, you have the food, and then you have the liquid, and then you have the mashke. So that's the chain that you have the pot, you have the food, and then you have the mashke. So this is going therefore you can have this chain. Now this is a shlishi. This is going according to Rabbi Kiva that says even by chulin there's shlishi by chulin. By chulin, even by chulin there's a level of shlishi. Tanan also we learned in the Mishnah sheretz and nimsa batana, if she found the sheretz in a tanur, in an oven, hapas shebesoich shniyah. The bread is a sheni. Bifnei shatanur tchila. Because we look at it, we view it, that the sheretz is on the tanur. We look at the sheretz is matama the tanur. It made the tanur into a rishon. And then the tanur made the bread into a sheni. So the bread that's in the oven is a sheni. Omer later Rava Rava v'na hachazil lahai tanur k'mandam ali tumadame v'taveh pas rishona. Why do you say the bread is a sheni? Why don't you say it's a rishon? How is that? Well, you say the sheretz is in the tanur. Why don't we look at it like the interior of the sheretz is filled with tuma, and it simultaneously is matama both the tanur and the bread. And just like it makes the tanur into a rishon, it should make the pas into a rishon as well. Why are you looking at it and saying that the sheretz is matama the tanur and the tanur is matama the pas? Why don't you say, well, just like the sheretz is matama the interior, the tanur is makabel tuma from the interior. It's a kli cheres matama from the interior. Why don't you say, well, the sheretz, the interior is filled with tuma, and just like it's matama the tanur, it simultaneously is matama the pas, and the pas should be a rishon. Amarle, he answered, you can't say it. There's sign because we will learn in the Bryce. You might think that if there are kalim in the tanur, that the kalim should be mekabel tuma from the avir, from the air of a kli cheres. You might think that kalim should be mekabel tuma from the interior of the tanur. Talmud loymar kol asher b'seicha yitma. It says in the pasuk that if the sheretz falls into the tanur, whatever is in the interior, whatever is inside the tanur will become tomei. And it says right next to it, mikol oichel, for any foods. So we darshan as follows. We learn kol asher b'seicha yitma, whatever's in the interior of the oven, mikol oichel, from foods. Food can be makabel tuma from the interior of the kli cheres. So it's oichel mitama v'kli cheres. Ve'ein kol kelim mitama v'kli cheres. But kelim do not become tomei from the interior of the kli cheres. So what do we see from here? We see from here that you don't view the interior as mole tuma, because if you did, then you'd say, well, just like the tanur, which is a kelim is makabel tuma from the sheretz that's in the interior, other kelim which are in the tanur should also be makabel tuma simultaneously and be makabel tuma from the sheretz. But from the fact that you see that the kelim are not makabel tuma if they're in the tanur, why is that? That shows you that we don't view it as the tanur is mole tuma, it's filled with tuma. And therefore, we have to view it as the sheretz mitama the tanur. Now, the tanur is not metama kelim that are inside, because a keli is only mekabel tuma from an avat tuma. The sheretz metama the tanur. The tanur is a rishon. It's not metama kelim that are in the tanur. It's metama oichlim that are in the tanur. So the sheretz is metama the tanur. The tanur is a rishon. If you have food inside the tanur, they become a sheni. They can become tomei. But kelim do not become tomei, because kelim are only makabel tumah from an av, and they are not makabel tumah from the sheretz. What's in the interior of the tanur is makabel tumah from the tanur. So the kelim are torn, because the kli cannot become tumah from a rishon. However, the pas is tomei. The pas is a sheni. So therefore, the sheretz that's in the tanur is matama. The tanur makes the tanur into a rishon. The food that's inside is not makabel tuma from the sheretz; it's makabel tuma from the tanur, and the food becomes a sheni.